Hey, it's Jeff Toyster here, wishing you a fantastic customer service week. We are about to go live in just a couple of minutes for a new and unexpected way to serve upset customers. Now, I have to get a couple of the technical items set up and ready to go. So bear with me right now for just a moment, if you don't mind. Let's make sure we get everything up here working as well as possible. Let's see, got to share the link. Oh, look at that. I think we got it. Look at that. And the event is up and running. Perfect. All right, so we're live. People are coming in. We have about a couple of minutes before we get started. And if you're joining us, I have a chat question for you. You could share in any of the comments. I'm going to share with you what I hope are some techniques that are new to you in terms of serving customers. What I'd like to ask you for is, what are some techniques you know already? So you can leave that as a comment. What techniques do you already know and use when you're working or serving an upset customer? What works for you right now? So share that as a comment. And looks like we'll get started in just a moment or two. And I'm going to double check on all of the good technical issues right here. Make sure we are running. Make sure we're live. Make sure things are working well. All right. Got people joining us, coming in. Perfect. All right. As far away as Ghana, Canada. Fantastic. All right. So we've got, let me put this up on the screen here. Hang on just a sec. Let me put this up here. Okay, here's our chat question. What techniques do you use already to serve upset or angry customers? Let's see if we can hear for you. All right. We got an acronym here, Niraj. ALPI, asking, listening, probing, insight. Excellent. Being patient. Fantastic. All right. Wow, this is a very international group. Panama, Venezuela, Spain, Italy. All right. Anyone here from the U.S.? That's where I am today, in the U.S. Oh, fantastic. Mexico City. Hey, Tino, North Park in San Diego. All right. Someone local. Fantastic. We have people from so many places. This is great. All right, so we're going to get started. Keep them coming. This is a live event if you're watching live, and that means we get to interact with each other. I'm going to take your questions, and I have a few interactive activities for you. So if you have a question about serving upset customers, please share that as a comment, and I'll do my best to get to it during the live broadcast. If you are watching this as a recording, I'm still checking the comments, so you could still leave a follow-up question if you're watching the recording, and that's fine. Heard from at least someone in Australia said, hey, it's 3 a.m. where I am. Will this be recorded? It's being recorded, so we've got you there. Okay, so I want to share with you a few things today to, I think, help you serve upset customers, maybe some hopefully new to you, and I'm going to jump right into the very first one if I can. Let's see if I can get this to show here. So there was a study going around, and maybe you heard this. The idea of this study was that in certain situations, if we thank a customer rather than apologize, we get better reactions. And I wanted to take a deeper dive. So I actually looked into the study. There was 2 studies, a series of several experiments. And there were a few results that I think were very interesting, and they had some implications for us in customer service. Now, the one you see on the screen here, this was from a restaurant. And what they did was they deliberately brought the food late. And then after bringing the food late, the server did one of 3 things. They either said, thank you for your patience and understanding, I'm sorry for the delay, or nothing at all. They did nothing to acknowledge the delay. And then afterwards, they gave the guests a survey. Now, unfortunately, they didn't track the satisfaction or the ratings on the survey itself, but what they did track was how many or what percentage of guests actually completed the survey. And you can see on the screen in the thank you condition, 82% of guests completed the survey, only 30% when they got a sorry or an apology, and no acknowledgement, only 12.5%. So that right away, this tells us something very interesting, that if you're surveying your upset customers, depending on how that upset situation or the situation is handled, might determine whether or not they bother to give you insight. And in this case, say the customers who got nothing, no acknowledgement, were least likely to provide feedback, at least in terms of the survey. So we don't want to trust our surveys too often. Sometimes this tells me our surveys might be too rosy, and we might have upset customers that are not sharing with us. Now, there was a few more experiments that they ran. Here's another one. They had some students do an experiment. They were promised some compensation for being part of that experiment. They said, it's going to come in by 8 o'clock tonight. It didn't. It showed up 8 o'clock the next day. And then afterwards, they asked the students on a survey of a scale of 1 to 7, 7 being high, how satisfied are you with this compensation? And with some students, they said, thank you for the understanding with this delay. Other students, they said, I'm sorry for this delay. And look at the difference again. The students who got the thank you were a bit more satisfied than the students who got the sorry. Okay, here's another one. Now this one, what they did was fairly similar to the compensation, but what they did instead was they promised the students their choice of a gift. And once the students selected the gift, at the end of the study, it was an unrelated study. At the end of the study, they said to the students, hey, the gift you selected, what we're actually giving you is slightly inferior. And once again, they tried 3 different approaches. One was, thanks for your understanding. Another one was, I'm sorry for this. And the third was no acknowledgement at all. And once again, you can see the thank you created the highest satisfaction on a post survey that asked students how satisfied they were with the lab itself. Sorry did better than nothing, but thank you did better than sorry. So this definitely seems like a pattern. Here's one more experiment I'll share with you. This is kind of an interesting one, again, done in a university. So we have to have this caveat that these are, except for the first one, the restaurant example, these are all university students who are not necessarily representative of all of our customers. But there are some insights here. Here's what they did in this study. They bumped into some students at a university and said, hey, will you complete this survey, unrelated survey topic? And they gave them the survey to complete on a tablet, like a little tablet computer. And afterwards, once they were done with the survey and they're handing the tablet back, then the research assistant said, oh, you know what? I gave you the wrong survey. Now, what they did afterwards was they either said, thank you for your understanding, or they said, I'm sorry for this. And then they gave them a card with a QR code on it that the student can scan and said, this will take you to the correct survey. Now, the student's compensation for this whole thing was just a candy bar. So what they were really testing was, would the student access the correct survey with the QR code? And they found that in the thank you condition, 75.5% did. In the sorry condition, only 57.7%. So what do we take from this particular study? Well, for me, what I really get from this is 2 things. One is our customers are a bit more compliant when we are giving them a thank you versus an apology for minor issues. And compliant means maybe doing something we're asking them to do or giving us feedback. So the thank you is also resulting in higher satisfaction for minor issues. And the study was actually pretty clear about this point, that if it's a major issue, like you take your car to a mechanic and they scratch up your car, a thank you is not going to work, right? We need to do more than that. We need to fix the issue. But it's interesting that thank you can be more powerful than sorry. Now, one thing they did not test thoroughly, but they had a hypothesis, and I think they're onto something, is that a thank you and an apology could sometimes be even more effective. They just didn't get to testing that one. All right. So, and Tino, you already had that one, right? You jumped on it. Look at this. Already ahead of the curve. That the sorry with an empathy statement, so I understand, etc., might be even more effective. So something to experiment, I think, in your organization. Okay, if you're just tuning in, we'll remind you I will be taking your question, and or if you have any questions, but I want to go to the next one if you can here. This is an interesting challenge. If you serve customers remotely or over the phone, maybe not as big, but if you serve them in person, we've got these masks, and the masks seem to get in the way of our normal human emotions. So I'm going to do a little test. I apologize if it's hard for you to hear me. My question for you via the comments: am I smiling right now? I'll give you a second to react to that. What do you think? Am I smiling right now? Send a comment. It's just a yes or no. It's a guess, I know. And there's a slight delay. It takes a few seconds for you to be able to share your comments. While I'm waiting for you to guess if I'm smiling or not, hopefully you can still hear me with the mask on. The mask does make it more difficult for us to see if we have positive body language. And here they are, the no's are coming in. You're right. No, I'm not. There's something you can tell, and someone said we got this with the eyes. Now, here's the difference. Not smiling, smiling. Not smiling, smiling. There is a difference with the eyes. Now, if you're on the phone, all right, I will take this off. If you're on the phone, it's a little hard to hear, but some of you might be in contact centers in person where you still have to wear a mask, which is a completely different challenge. What we want to do is make sure, especially when we're greeting customers in person, that even though they can't physically see our mouth, they can still see our smile. And we can do this with an authentic smile. We can see it in our eyes. It's called a smize, smiling with your eyes. I think Tyra Banks coined this phrase. But regardless, if they can see that smile with your eyes, then they're much more likely to feel that friendliness that you're projecting. Also, if they can't see you, but they can hear you, they can often hear your smile. So you could do this experiment yourself. Hi, how are you today? Hi, how are you today? When you smile, the tone of voice conveys it. So we have the mask. The mask is a service challenge for many of us now. We have to make sure we're almost overemphasizing our positive body language because we don't have the benefit of them being able to see our mouths now. Okay, so that was the second one that I wanted to share with you, the power of the smize. Let's see. I'm just checking here to see if we have any questions come in. We will be taking your questions throughout, in addition to some of the techniques I'm sharing with you. Let's see. There's an interesting one. This is from someone who's anonymous here, a LinkedIn user. I work in a stand, and sometimes a lot of people are in a hurry and don't want to wait. And they're looking for a sentence to give them confidence, to let them know I will not be long in attending them. So there's a couple things you can do here. One is certainly acknowledge the cue. And as we just learned, a thank you might be more powerful than I'm sorry. Like, hey, thanks for your patience, folks. I'll be right with you. The second thing is, and this is kind of an interesting little twist, if the people in line see you being friendly, being approachable, even being understanding when someone's really being upset, they're more likely to empathize with you and think more highly of your service. So people are actually forming a first impression of you while they're in line. On the other hand, if they see you getting upset or frustrated, or if you have an upset customer and you act unprofessionally as a reaction to them being upset, they're less likely to empathize with you, and they form an impression ahead of time that your service is going to be poor. So make sure the people online can see you smizing, can hear you providing exceptional service, even when people are upset. And that often makes it easier to get a better reaction. Awesome. Great question there. Okay. A couple more that I want to share with you. And I see a couple more questions coming in. So Oh, and here's one. I want to get to this one real quick. What are some tips for frontline agents to make sure their smile is felt through an email, which is really, really difficult? I think this one's tough because they don't get your tone. And so one of the things with emails is we want to try to make it difficult for customers to misunderstand our intentions. And this especially is true with tone. So even small things like exclamation points instead of a period gives it positivity. Like, I hope you have a great week, period, versus I hope you have a great week, exclamation point. That small thing can make a difference. It's sometimes helpful to reread things and make sure there's no opportunity for misunderstanding. The third thing I would suggest to you is make sure that you keep your emails as short and direct as possible. At the same time, add just 1 or 2 words that are clearly positive, so that it's very difficult for the customer to misunderstand what you're writing. Even if it's a simple salutation like "have a great week" or "thank you for that question," something to make it really crystal clear that you're being positive. Okay, I would like to share the next one with you. And this one actually, it came from an interview I did recently with a colleague, Erica Mancuso. So she's sharing this one. I'm going to see if I can put this up on the screen here. And I want you to hear this one directly from Erica. Let's see. Bear with me just a moment as I pull this up. Here it is. All right. And hopefully you can hear Erica's dialogue here.
You have to assume they're coming from a place that their intentions are good too. Sure, will they embellish things a little bit? Maybe. I mean, haven't we all done that as customers at some point in time? We do. But I do think it's really beneficial before you are on a call like that, or as you're on a call with that, take a step back from the issue at hand and try to come at it from that angle, right? The client has good intentions. They're not trying to wreck my day. They just want their issue resolved.
All right. Hopefully you were able to see and hear that clearly. So what Erica's really saying is that customers will sometimes embellish. They'll exaggerate. In customer service, I call it the rule of 3. There's part of our brain that realizes that sometimes we get upset about things we shouldn't be getting upset about. So that part of our brain protects our own ego and exaggerates. So instead of "I was waiting for 5 minutes," "I was waiting for 15 minutes." Or instead of "the person was slightly rude to me," "they cussed me out." Customers do exaggerate. And I think Erica's tip is fantastic. What she's saying is we're going to give them the benefit of the doubt. They're not intentionally trying to wreck our day. And if we can give them the benefit of the doubt and kind of look past their exaggeration, we'll become better listeners. We'll become more in tune with our customers' needs, and we'll be better able to empathize with them. So think about this when we do have customers that really seem to blow things out of proportion. We've all got them. If you can give them the benefit of the doubt, it allows them and you to get past those exaggerations and get to the heart of their issue. Now, sometimes that's easier said than done. And so I want to give you another tip here, but rather than just tell you about it, I'm going to show you a quick scene from a coffee shop. This is obviously pre-COVID. No one's wearing masks in the scene, but I want you to tell me what the barista in this coffee shop did wrong. So let's see if I can pull this up. Hopefully you are able to see and hear it. Oops, I pulled up the wrong one. Excuse me. I got to bring this back for just a moment. Okay, let's try this again. Second try. Let's see if we can figure out what the barista did wrong as we pull this up. Okay, here we go. I'll full screen it for you.
Hey, can I help you?
Yeah, you guys screwed up my drink order again. I was here 2 days ago and you did the exact same thing. I asked for 4 pumps of vanilla. You gave me like maybe 2.
Well, it's not my fault your drink got screwed up last time. I wasn't even here 2 days ago. So
Whatever, you're here today. 4 pumps of vanilla. How hard can that be?
All right. So hopefully this was obvious. Is there something you may have spotted that this particular barista did not do very well in this example? If so, let me know via the comments. We'll see. You may have noticed the customer being maybe a little bit too upset than would be reasonable for a latte that's slightly off. But let's see. Let's see what we got. All right. A few here. Slow on the acknowledgement. Very defensive. I like this one right here from Heidi. Yeah, he didn't even stop what he was doing. Kind of like, yeah, can I help you? Like he wasn't in it from the beginning. He didn't take ownership. He didn't sympathize. Now, if we're honest, we may have found ourselves doing something similar when confronted with an unreasonably angry customer. And she was unreasonably angry, or at least it appeared to be that way. Most reasonable people would say, hey, this latte is not quite right. Would you mind remaking it? Not a big deal. But what he did was he got sucked into her anger. And we've probably seen our employees doing exactly the same thing. So why does this happen? The reason it happens is something called the fight or flight instinct. This is a natural instinct we have when we're confronted with an angry person. We either want to fight with them, which is what this barista did, not physically, of course, but he argued with her. He was defensive, as some of you pointed out. Or we want to flee from them. That's the flight, which is get away. Now, if you encounter an angry person in your neighborhood, for example, you have those options. You can argue with them if you'd like, or you can leave the scene. In customer service, you're expected to smile and listen to them and validate all their feelings, even if they're unreasonable. That's difficult. We have to acknowledge that is difficult, especially when our instincts are telling us to do something completely different. So, what can we do about it? We have to understand when we're feeling that instinct, and the technique it's simple but not easy. Understanding the fight or flight instinct coming up. So it could be our blood pressure rising, the little hairs on the back of our neck coming up, our flushed face. When we feel that, it's taking a brief pause to regroup and not give in to that instinct. So I want to share with you another version of the same scene. And I want you to see if you can spot what the barista does this time to avoid getting caught up in the customer's anger. So let's see if I can bring this up and share it with you. Hopefully I have the right video. I do. All right, let's listen to this one.
How may I help you?
Yeah, you guys screwed up my drink order again. I was here 2 days ago and you did the exact same thing. I asked for 4 pumps of vanilla. You gave me like maybe 2.
Well, I'm sorry we didn't get it right, but I'd be happy to remake it for you and add more vanilla.
Yeah, I just don't understand why this keeps happening. Like 4 pumps of vanilla, how hard can that be?
No, I completely understand. I actually peppermint person myself. Can't get enough of it. This was a vanilla latte, right?
Okay, what did you notice this time around? What was different about the barista? Did you notice that moment, that short moment in time when the barista made that decision? And once he did that, what did he do different than we saw in the first one? So we could probably see a few things here. I'm going to wait and see what observations you have. There's a slight delay. And here we are, we're coming in. So he apologized. I made eye contact, demonstrated empathy. And Heidi, I'm glad you picked up on this one. If you noticed, one of the things that he did once he caught himself, he validated the customer by giving just a tiny bit of his own experiment. Hey, I'm a peppermint person myself. Can't get enough of it. I get it. I know where you're coming from. It's okay. You're being reasonable, even though she really wasn't. So if you think about how different those two scenes were, they started out exactly the same way. But one went south. It didn't go well at all because he gave into the fight or flight instinct. The second one got a lot better because caught himself and he took that pause. So those were the 4 that I wanted to share with you today. We have just a little bit of time. If you have some additional questions for me about serving upset customers, whether it's the techniques I shared with you or some other thing that is on your mind, please let me know. I have another one that I just got the other day, and I want to share this with you as an example of a question I know a lot of customer service leaders have, which is the leader who wrote to me said, I have an employee who kind of has a lot of challenges with customers, but doesn't seem to acknowledge it. In other words, we talked to her about it and she doesn't seem to understand that she's doing anything wrong. What do I do? And this is actually a fairly common problem for leaders. So the very first thing you need to do to be able to establish and get an employee to take responsibility for their own growth is make it crystal clear what good looks like so you can compare it to bad. So if you don't have a clear picture of, hey, this is what a good example looks like, it's really hard to compare and contrast them. So when I shared with you those 2 examples, I had the good example. And if I'm coaching that barista, I could say, hey, this is what a good example of responding to that customer looks like. Let's compare what you did in this particular situation. So that is one of the first steps. The second step then is to get the employee to self-identify. As leaders, we often tell them, but I'd rather have the leader tell me. There's more commitment, there's more understanding. So instead of saying, hey, here are the 5 things you did wrong here, what I will say is, okay, we agree this is what good looks like. Looking at your last interaction, what do you think you could do better? And if the employee says, well, I think I could do X, Y, and Z, we've got commitment, we've got some understanding. On the other hand, if the employee says, nothing, I was perfect, then you know you probably have a problem. So if we have clarity on what good looks like, and an employee clearly does not provide that performance, but will not recognize it, what we know, and I'm speaking as an adult learning professional, that employee probably will struggle to learn and grow. And unfortunately, you might have to part ways with that employee. But before you get to that point, make sure you have clarity on what they should be doing. Make sure you have clarity on what they are doing and what the difference is. All right. Let's see if we've got any questions here. All right. It's going to take a moment to read this. David's got one here. So if you want to read this one along with me, I work in a hospital facility. Sometimes there's patients who come in feeling that they are an emergency, and sometimes a misunderstanding happens because they want to get seen urgently, right? And I think if I understand David's question correctly, is how do we make these patients feel well served, even though really one patient's needs are probably going to be a higher priority than another? So there's a few things that we can do here. One is we need to empathize with patients as much as possible and make them feel good and welcome. One thing, especially in a hospital setting, patients' anxiety is definitely running sky high in many, many cases. And the difference that I've often observed is that when we treat patients with dignity and respect, we listen to them for just a second. We make them feel comfortable. We make them feel like we're on their side. If, on the other hand, the patient comes in with a lot of anxiety and doesn't get those emotions validated, they get kind of the stop sign from the person who's greeting them or doing triage, their anxiety is probably going to increase. So we need to focus on the patient as an individual first and make them feel good. The second thing is, I think this is a in general tip, that patients and customers respond really well to fairness. Once you acknowledge them and tell them, hey, here's how we're going to do things, here's our procedure, they feel a lot better than if we just say, we'll get to you. So if we say, hey, you're doing fine, we took a quick look at your vitals, I think you're okay for now, here's where you are in line, and we'll check on you, but let me know if anything changes. So you're acknowledging the customer, you're treating them with respect, empathy, and dignity, and you're also giving them a sense of kind of where they are in the queue. That helps, but I'll also say I don't envy those of you who work in the medical profession, because people start out so often with such high anxiety that it often takes a lot of work to make them feel better. All right. I want to see if there's any other questions that I can answer on the live broadcast. And if you do, maybe I have time for one more. For those of you who are listening to the recording, if you have a question, I'm still reviewing the comments. You can type your question as a comment and I will be able to see it. Might take me a few hours, maybe even a day or so to respond, but I will respond. So with that, as we wrap up, I hope you're having a fantastic customer service week. One thing that I will remind all of you is that customer service is something maybe we celebrate 1 week out of a year. We celebrate our team 1 week out of a year. But that doesn't mean that customer service is something that we really only focus on 1 week out of the year. So I'm going to share with something as a comment as much as I can. At least this one's going to YouTube and Facebook. It won't be showing up if you're on LinkedIn, so I'll have to post it later. But I have a weekly email. Many of you probably get this. It's customer service tip of the week. 1 tip via email once per week. And a lot of customer service leaders use this as a way to constantly reinforce those skills that we all need to have. So I encourage you, if you don't already, sign up for it. It's completely free, and it's just a way to keep everybody sharp and focused every single week throughout the year. All right, well, let's wrap things up then. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Hope you have a fantastic customer service week, and I hope you gained something of value today. I'll see you next time.